The year is 2010. A new game arrives, asking a daring question. What if a video game played less like an arcade and more like an interactive thriller? This was Heavy Rain. Developed by Quantic Dream, it plunged players into a rain-soaked, Nord-drenched mystery, centered on a desperate father searching for his missing son, the Origami Killer. Its significance lies not in traditional gameplay, but in its ambitious narrative design. It pioneered the modern interactive drama, where every dialogue, choice, and quick-time event carries permanent weight. Characters could die, and the story would continue without them, a radical concept that made every decision feel fraught with consequence. It proved games could deliver mature, cinematic stories where player agency directly shaped a complex, emotional plot. While its mechanics and writing have been debated, Heavy Rain stands as a pivotal experiment, challenging the industry and players to reconsider the storytelling potential of the medium itself. Heavy Rain's narrative isn't just told through cutscenes, it's woven directly into the gameplay mechanics. Every action, from a simple dialogue choice to a frantic quick-time event, carries narrative weight. This design creates a powerful sense of consequence. When you fumble a button prompt during Ethan's trials, the failure isn't abstract. It feels like your mistake, impacting the story in real time. The controls themselves reflect character psychology. Ethan's movements are often sluggish and heavy, mirroring his despair, while Madison's are more agile. Even mundane tasks, like brushing your teeth or playing with your son, are interactive, building emotional investment through routine. This blurs the line between player and character. Ultimately, the game argues that narrative-driven gameplay isn't about freedom of movement, but freedom of choice within a tightly authored drama. Your performance directly authors the plot, making you complicit in every success and tragedy. The gameplay isn't in service of the story, it is the story. Ethan Mars begins the game as a broken man, a shell haunted by the death of one son and the kidnapping of another. His journey is not one of traditional heroism, but of desperate, degrading penance. The Origami Killer's trials are designed to test a father's love through self-mutilation and moral sacrifice. Ethan's willingness to cut off his own finger, risk electrocution, and even take a life becomes the brutal metric of his devotion. This transforms him from a passive victim into an active, if tragic, participant. His guilt over Jason's death is the wound that never heals, and saving Sean becomes his only path to redemption, or perhaps atonement. Crucially, the game makes his suffering interactive. The player, must choose to drive into oncoming traffic or press the razor against his skin. This forces us to internalize his torment, questioning what we would endure for someone we love. Ethan's journey is ultimately about the extremes of paternal love, asking if a man can be a good father only after he has been destroyed. Madison Paige enters Heavy Rain as an outsider to the central mystery, yet becomes its emotional anchor. Unlike the other protagonists driven by paternal desperation, her motivation is initially professional curiosity, then a selfless desire to help a stranger. This makes her the player's purest conduit for empathy. Her role structurally subverts expectations. In a story about endangered children, she faces a uniquely adult gendered horror in the attempted assaults by the cab driver and the doctor. These sequences, while controversial, frame her not as a damsel, but as a resilient survivor using her intelligence to escape. Her investigative work at the Blue Lagoon and the Butterfly Club often provides crucial breakthroughs the male protagonists miss. Ultimately, Madison's role is to be the story's moral compass. She supports Ethan, protects Sean, and pursues the truth without the baggage of guilt or obsession that clouds the other's judgment. She represents the possibility of redemption through compassion, not just relentless pursuit. Norman Jayden's investigation is a race against two clocks: the Origami Killer's and his own deteriorating body. The ARI interface, his high-tech glasses, symbolizes his dual struggle. It represents both cutting-edge federal resources and his addiction to tryptocane, a drug he uses to stave off the side effects. His investigation is therefore deeply personal, a constant battle to stay sharp and sober enough to piece together the clues. While other characters are driven by raw emotion, Jayden represents procedure and logic. Yet, the ARI often reveals his subconscious, projecting his fears and withdrawals into the crime scenes he analyzes. His pursuit of the killer is as much about proving his own competence in a hostile precinct as it is about saving a life. Every piece of evidence he collects is a small victory against his own demons. Ultimately, his arc asks whether a man broken by technology can use that same technology to achieve something human. Redemption. His final choice regarding the drug is the true conclusion of his investigation, determining what kind of man survives the rain.
Мэр ни разу не вмешивался в работу следователей, разве что с целью оказать посильную помощь полиции.
The private investigator Scott Shelby appears to be the most morally grounded character in Heavy Rain. A former cop now dedicated to helping the families of the Aragami killer's victims, he projects an image of weary compassion. His physical frailty, the asthma, the slow movements, makes him seem vulnerable, a man fighting a personal battle against a relentless evil. This persona is a meticulously constructed lie. Scott Shelby is the Origami Killer. His entire investigation is a cruel performance, allowing him to revisit his crimes, manipulate the grieving families, and control the narrative. His asthma attacks are not just a character detail. They are a physical manifestation of the drowning trauma from his childhood that drives his murderous compulsion. Every wheeze is a reminder of the river. This revelation recontextualizes every scene. His kindness becomes predation. His search for justice is a sick game. Shelby's duality forces us to question our narrative assumptions, demonstrating how a story can hide its monster in plain sight. Dressed in the guise of the hero, he is the ultimate unreliable narrator, and his true identity is the story's most devastating twist. The Origami Killer's motives are rooted in a tragic attempt to undo his own childhood trauma. As a boy, John Shepard nearly drowned, and his brother Jason did. His father, in a desperate bid to save John, could only resuscitate him by performing an emergency tracheotomy. This left John with a scar and a profound, twisted belief that a child who survives drowning is made stronger, purified by the ordeal. His method is a cruel, systematic replication of this trauma. He abducts sons from public places, holding them captive for 4 days as their fathers race against time. Each victim is forced to endure repeated drowning trials in a storm drain, building lung capacity. The final test is the ultimate trial for the father, a cruel labyrinth of moral and physical challenges, ending with the choice to sacrifice himself to save his son. The origami figures left at each scene are more than a calling card. They are symbolic offerings from his own childhood, a fragile art representing the children he believes he is helping to become strong. In his warped mind, he is not a murderer, but a harsh savior, creating stronger survivors or weeding out the unworthy. The true impact of your choices in Heavy Rain isn't just about who lives or dies. It's about the emotional erosion of the characters you control. Every failed QuickTime event, every missed clue, and every harsh dialogue option leaves a permanent scar on the narrative fabric. Take Ethan Mars. Your failures physically manifest as injuries, but the deeper damage is psychological. A series of poor choices can break him, transforming a desperate father into a shattered man, barely functional. Similarly, Norman Jayden's addiction is a battle you fight through your inputs. Neglect it, and his perception of the case crumbles into paranoid hallucinations. The game's branching paths are less about good or bad endings, and more about the burden of consequence. You can arrive at the same story beat, but the emotional context is wholly defined by your journey. A survivor may be rescued, but are they truly saved if you sacrificed their trust to get there? Heavy Rain argues that our choices don't just alter a plot, they define the psychological state of the characters we shepherd, making the impact deeply personal and often haunting. The QuickTime event is often dismissed as a relic of clumsy design, but in Heavy Rain, it is the core language of the experience. This isn't about pressing buttons to watch a cool cutscene, it's about translating stress, panic, and physical struggle directly into your hands. The infamous Hold R2 to walk criticism misses the point. That deliberate, awkward tension mirrors Ethan's fractured mental state. Every action, no matter how mundane, requires conscious effort. During intense sequences, like the highway chase or the trial in the electric maze, the QTEs become a frantic ballet. Your fumbling mirrors the character's desperation. A missed button isn't a failure state. It's a narrative beat, a slip, a mistake with consequences. The mechanic makes you complicit. You don't just watch Sean's father crawl through glass, you feel every painful prompt. Heavy Rain argues that QTEs, when fully integrated, can be a powerful tool for empathy, transforming the player from an observer into a physically invested participant within the tragedy. The Press X to Jason scene is a masterclass in emotional weight through interactive design. On the surface, it's a simple, repetitive action, mashing a button to shout for a lost son. But this mechanical repetition becomes a profound metaphor for desperate, futile grief. Your physical effort mirrors Ethan's psychological torment. Each press feels heavier, the silence between shouts more deafening. The game offers no reward, no narrative progression for success. The only outcome is the raw, escalating performance of a broken father. This interactivity forces complicity. You aren't just watching Ethan's despair, you are enacting it, making his helplessness your own. The scene's power lies in this uncomfortable fusion of player action and character emotion. It transforms a standard QuickTime event into a poignant, haunting ritual of mourning, proving that in games, true emotional impact often lies not in what we see, but in what we are made to do. The heart of Heavy Rain is not its mystery, but its raw examination of fatherhood under extreme duress. Each male protagonist grapples with paternal failure in some form. Ethan Mars's journey is the purest expression of this. A man broken by the loss of one son, now offered a horrific path to save another. The trials he endures, crawling through broken glass, risking electrocution, even potentially taking a life, are a brutal metaphor for the lengths a father will go. His sacrifice is measured in pain and moral compromise, questioning how much of one's soul can be given away before you're no longer the father your child needs. This theme echoes in Scott Shelby's corrupted quest for vengeance, and even in Norman Jayden's struggle against his own demons. The game argues that fatherhood itself is a series of choices and sacrifices, but it brutally asks where the line is between noble sacrifice and tragic, self-destructive obsession. The ultimate victory isn't in simply surviving, but in emerging with your humanity, and your role as a protector somehow intact. Heavy Rain builds its mystery not through a single shocking twist, but through a pervasive, unsettling atmosphere of doubt. The core question isn't just, who is the Aragami killer, but can I trust what I'm seeing? The game masterfully uses its four protagonists to fracture the truth. You may uncover a clue as Ethan, only to misinterpret it as Madison, creating suspense through dramatic irony. The narrative deliberately withholds information, making every character a potential suspect, even the ones you control. This approach generates a unique, personal suspense. The mystery unfolds through your own actions and biases. A missed clue or a failed QuickTime event isn't just a setback, it actively reshapes your understanding of the case. The suspense comes from the paranoia that you, the player, might be orchestrating the very tragedy you're trying to stop. Heavy Rain's mystery is therefore a participatory one, where the greatest threat isn't a hidden villain, but the possibility that the truth has been in your hands all along, obscured by rain and flawed perception. Part 13 examines the game's core, its moral dilemmas. These aren't abstract choices, but visceral, time-pressured decisions that force you to weigh one life against another. The most famous is Sean's father Ethan being ordered to sever his own finger to prove his dedication. Do you commit self-mutilation for a chance to save your son? The game makes you physically perform the action, forcing complicity. Other characters face different tests. As Scott Shelby, a private investigator, you can choose mercy or brutal violence during interrogations. As journalist Madison Page, you might use intimacy as a tool for information, crossing ethical lines for the greater good. Each choice is stripped of a clear good or bad label. They are simply desperate acts by broken people. Ultimately, Heavy Rain asks if the ends justify the means, and makes you, the player, answer not with a button press, but with a considered, often harrowing, action. The morality is
Не пришлось бы тащить вас сюда.
remain on your conscience long after the
Слушайте, мы не убивали Манфреда. Мы были там по случайности.
Heavy Rain's visual and audio design work in tandem to create its oppressive, melancholic atmosphere. Visually, it employs a desaturated color palette where grays, blues, and browns dominate. This isn't just an aesthetic choice, it visually communicates the constant, dreary rain and the emotional weight crushing the characters. The camera often adopts a cinematic, slightly detached perspective, framing characters in wide shots that emphasize their isolation within the environment. The audio design is equally crucial. The sound of rain is a near-constant presence, a percussive backdrop of droplets on windows, roofs, and pavement that becomes a character in itself. This is complemented by a minimalist, haunting score by Norman Corbeil, which uses sparse piano melodies and swelling strings to underscore moments of tension and tragedy without overwhelming the scene. Ambient sounds, like the muffled chaos of a crowded mall or the eerie silence of a lonely house, are meticulously crafted to build unease. Together, this audiovisual language doesn't just tell a story, it makes you feel the pervasive dampness and despair, immersing you completely in its somber world. While the ambition of Heavy Rain is undeniable, its execution in voice acting and motion capture remains its most infamous flaw. The performances exist in an uncanny valley of earnest effort undermined by technical and directional missteps. The motion capture, for its time, delivered realistic physicality, the weight of Ethan's despair, the tension in Madison's movements. Yet, these nuanced physical performances clash violently with the stilted and often poorly delivered dialogue. The voice acting, particularly for the children, is frequently jarring, pulling the player out of the narrative's emotional gravity. Accents waver inexplicably, and line readings sometimes lack the conviction the scenes demand. This creates a strange dissonance. You see a character's body language scream in agony, but the voice feels disconnected, flat. It's a testament to the strength of the story and the player's investment that these flaws become almost endearing, part of the game's unique, if uneven, character. Ultimately, these performances are a product of their time, a pioneering but imperfect fusion of cinema and interactivity where the human element, ironically, proved the hardest to perfect. Upon release, Heavy Rain was met with polarized reactions. Critics praised its bold, cinematic ambition and emotional weight, highlighting the innovative, interactive drama format. The branching narrative and butterfly effect system were seen as a significant step forward for storytelling in games. Performances, particularly from the lead actors, were commended for their raw, motion-captured intensity, selling the grim atmosphere. However, criticism was equally sharp. The plot's numerous logical holes and the now infamous plot twist were lambasted as contrived and poorly executed. Dialogue was often cited as clunky and unintentionally humorous, undermining the serious tone. The controls, even with patches, were frequently called cumbersome and frustrating. Over time, its legacy has solidified as a flawed but important pioneer. It proved a market for mature, choice-driven narratives, directly paving the way for titles like Detroit: Become Human. While its technical and writing flaws are undeniable, Heavy Rain is critically analyzed as a crucial, messy experiment that expanded the medium's potential for emotional, player-driven drama. Heavy Rain's influence on interactive storytelling is most profound in its commitment to consequence. It demonstrated that a mainstream game could be built entirely around character-driven dilemmas, where every action or inaction permanently altered the narrative fabric. This wasn't about branching endings, but a constantly evolving middle, making players feel the direct weight of their choices. The game popularized the no game over philosophy. Failing a quick-time event didn't mean reloading. It meant the story adapted, often tragically, forcing players to live with their mistakes. This created unparalleled tension and emotional investment. While its controls and dialogue are often critiqued, Heavy Rain proved a market existed for mature, cinematic, interactive drama. It paved the way for titles like Detroit, Become Human, and the Dark Pictures Anthology, and gave developers permission to explore slower, more intimate stories. It argued that games could be about vulnerability and parenting as much as combat, expanding the emotional palette of the entire medium.
Жалко. Я люблю смотреть телевизор.
Вы помните Джона?
Мой Джонни. Он такой хороший мальчик.
Moving beyond Heavy Rain, Quantic Dream's later titles refined and sometimes rejected its core ideas. Beyond, Two Souls abandoned the illusion of player control for a more cinematic, linear narrative focusing on a single protagonist with a clearer backstory. Its branching paths felt more like curated choices than the desperate systemic struggle of Ethan Mars. Detroit: Become Human represents the studio's technical and narrative peak, applying Heavy Rain's multi-perspective thriller format to a grand sci-fi allegory. It learned from past interface issues, offering far more clarity and consequence with a flowchart making every divergence visible. The android's fight for freedom carries a thematic weight Heavy Rain aimed for, but often missed in its personal crime drama. Yet Heavy Rain's raw, grounded desperation remains unique. While Detroit is polished and Beyond is artistic, Heavy Rain's clunky systems and moral ambiguity created a specific, unreplicated tension. Its legacy is that of a bold, flawed prototype from which Quantic Dream built its more sophisticated, but arguably less emotionally Heavy messy Rain's legacy
successors.
is a complex one, a foundation of cracked concrete upon which modern narrative games have built. It demonstrated a mainstream appetite for interactive drama where gameplay was almost entirely choice and consequence, paving the way for the dominance of studios like Telltale and the polished cinematic branching of titles like Detroit. Become Human. Yet its true enduring impact is in its failures as much as its ambitions. The game's infamous plot holes, awkward dialogue, and the divisive nature of its QuickTime event sequences became a crucial learning tool for the industry. Developers saw the pitfalls of prioritizing cinematic presentation over consistent logic and player agency. Today we see its DNA in the relentless pursuit of emotional, player-driven stories, but filtered through higher standards of writing and more elegant integration of interaction. Heavy Rain dared to be a playable movie, and in stumbling, it showed everyone else how to walk that tightrope. It remains the essential flawed blueprint that made the genre commercially viable. As we reach the end of this analysis, it's clear Heavy Rain's legacy is not defined by polish but by its profound ambition. It dared to center an entire AAA experience on emotional consequence and fragile characters, making player investment the primary mechanic. While its flaws are evident, they are the scars of a pioneer venturing into uncharted territory. It remains a landmark because it fundamentally expanded the language of interactive storytelling. It proved that a game could be about parenthood, desperation, and sacrifice, with tension arising from quiet moments and difficult choices rather than combat prowess. Its branching narrative, however imperfect, created a powerful illusion of agency that resonated deeply. Heavy Rain paved the way for an entire genre of narrative-driven games, showing developers and players alike the potential for mature, cinematic drama in the medium. It stands as a crucial, bold experiment, a testament to the idea that a game's greatest strength can simply be making you care. For that risk, it will always be remembered.